24-hour inside the world's most secure prison, inside ADX Florence. Welcome to Hell on Earth. The wind howls across the high desert of southern Colorado. Dust rolls over empty land that stretches for miles in every direction. No cities, no neighborhoods, no signs of life, just silence. And then, rising out of that silence like a concrete scar carved into the earth, a fortress. Steel fences layered on steel fences. Guard towers watching from every angle. Motion sensors buried beneath gravel. Cameras that never blink. Walls so thick they were designed to withstand explosions. This is ADX Florence, officially called the United States Penitentiary Administrative Maximum Facility, unofficially known by a darker name, the Alcatraz of the Rockies. This is where America sends the inmates it cannot control. Terrorists, cartel bosses, mass murderers, domestic extremists, men so dangerous that regular maximum security prisons couldn't hold them. At ADX Florence, escape is considered impossible. Human contact is nearly non-existent, and silence is part of the punishment. Inmates spend up to 23 hours a day alone, sealed inside concrete cells the size of a parking space. No group meals, no yard time together, no casual conversations, no second chances. Today, we're taking you inside a full 24-hour cycle at the most secure prison on Earth. From the moment the lights snap on in the morning to the long, echoing nights where even breathing feels loud, we'll uncover what daily life really looks like behind these walls, who's held here, why this place was built, and what happens to the human mind when isolation becomes a lifestyle. But before we dive in, drop a comment and let us know where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. If you enjoy true crime stories like this, be sure to like the video, subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and share it with someone who'd love it too. Because once you enter ADX Florence, there's no turning back. ADX Florence wasn't built by accident. It was born out of chaos. In the late 1970s and early 1980s, America's prison system was losing control. High-profile inmates were orchestrating crimes from behind bars. Guards were being assaulted. Hostages were being taken. In 1983, 2 correctional officers were murdered inside the federal penitentiary in Marion, Illinois. The message was clear. Some inmates were too dangerous for traditional prisons. The government needed something new, something absolute, something designed not for rehabilitation, but containment. So in 1994, on a remote patch of land near Florence, Colorado, the Bureau of Prisons opened ADX Florence, a prison built from psychological research, military-grade security planning, and lessons learned from every failure before it. Every detail was intentional. The location, the architecture, even the shape of the cells. ADX Florence wasn't meant to be harsh. It was meant to be final. From the outside, ADX Florence looks sterile. Beige concrete, minimal windows, clean lines. But inside, everything is calculated. Each inmate lives in a single-person cell measuring roughly 7 by 12 feet. The bed is concrete. The desk is concrete. The stool is concrete. Even the shower is built into the wall. There are no bars, only solid steel doors with narrow slots. A small window offers a glimpse of sky angled, so inmates can't see other prisoners or guards. No visual connection. No sense of community. Just you and your thoughts. Every movement is monitored, every sound recorded, every step logged. Guards communicate through headsets. Doors open electronically. Meals slide through slots. Inmates are escorted in chains. ADX Florence runs on isolation, precision, and routine, because routine breaks people down. ADX Florence doesn't house petty criminals. It holds the worst of the worst. Men like Theodore Kaczynski, the Unabomber, Zacarias Moussaoui, connected to 9/11, Ramzi Youssef, mastermind of the 1993 World Trade Center bombing, drug kingpins, gang leaders, mass shooters, extremists. These inmates didn't just break the law, they shattered lives. Many were moved here after orchestrating violence from other prisons. Some attacked guards. Others ran criminal networks from their cells. ADX Florence is where influence dies, where power disappears, where reputation means nothing. Here, everyone is reduced to a number. At exactly 6 a.m., the lights come on, not gradually, instantly. A harsh fluorescent glow floods every cell at once. There's no alarm clock, no gentle wake-up, just brightness slicing through darkness. Inmates rise from concrete beds. Some stretch, some pace, some stare at the walls. Breakfast arrives through a narrow slot, plastic tray, plastic utensils, powdered eggs, bread, fruit, coffee substitute. No talking, no eye contact. Most prisoners eat alone in silence. Some save food for later. Others force themselves to swallow even when they're not hungry, because hunger behaves differently in solitary confinement. Time feels elastic. Minutes stretch, hours blur, and boredom becomes physical. Doctors and psychologists have studied places like ADX Florence for decades. They've found that prolonged isolation alters the brain. Inmates report hallucinations, memory loss, panic attacks, emotional numbness. Some talk to themselves just to hear a voice. Others stop speaking altogether. Former prisoners describe a creeping sense of unreality. Walls feel closer. Thoughts become louder. Days lose meaning. One former inmate said, "After a while, you don't know if you're still a person or just something being stored." ADX Florence doesn't use torture. It uses silence. And silence can be devastating. If inmates are compliant, they may receive 1 hour outside their cell. But outside doesn't mean freedom. It means a small, enclosed concrete yard, often called a recreation pen. High walls, steel mesh overhead, no open sky, no grass, no other prisoners. Some walk in circles. Some do push-ups. Some just stand still, soaking in the rare change of scenery. Guards watch from above, every movement tracked, every second timed. When the hour ends, inmates are cuffed and returned to their cells. Another door closes. Another day folds inward. For most inmates, ADX Florence is temporary, a place to stabilize behavior before transferring back to lower security facilities. But for others, this is permanent. They are classified as no human contact inmates. They will die here, their appeals exhausted, their names forgotten, their world reduced to concrete and memory. Some have been inside for over 20 years. 2 decades of silence. 2 decades of walls. 2 decades of watching the same patch of ceiling. And this is where our story takes a darker turn, because among these inmates was a man whose presence would expose the hidden cost of ADX Florence. A man whose mental collapse would spark lawsuits, protests, and international attention. His name was Thomas Silverstein, and his story changes everything. Thomas Silverstein arrived at ADX Florence already broken. Before Colorado, before the concrete cells, before the silent Silverstein had spent decades moving through America's harshest prisons. He was originally convicted of armed robbery, but prison changed him. Inside Leavenworth and later Marion, Illinois, Silverstein became involved in violent prison gangs. In 1983, he was implicated in the murder of 2 correctional officers on the same day. The system responded with isolation. Years of it. By the time ADX Florence opened, Silverstein was transferred there as one of its very first inmates. He would never leave. For over 30 years, Thomas Silverstein lived in near-total solitary confinement. He ate alone, slept alone, exercised alone. He had no physical contact with another human being for decades. Not a handshake, not a hug, not even accidental brushing in a hallway. Eventually, prison officials classified him under a special status. No human contact, ever. Even when he was moved, guards wore heavy protective gear and communicated through shields. He became a symbol of ADX Florence, not because he was the most infamous inmate, but because he represented what happens when isolation becomes permanent. Silverstein once wrote letters describing how the walls seemed to breathe, how his thoughts echoed, how time stopped behaving normally. He spoke about losing the ability to feel joy, about memories fading, about feeling like he was slowly disappearing. In 2019, Thomas Silverstein died in his cell at age 67. He had spent over 3 decades alone. No funeral, no public goodbye, just another door closing. ADX Florence has never advertised itself. There are no tours, no visitor centers, no documentaries filmed inside its walls. But over the years, cracks began to form in its perfect image. Former inmates filed lawsuits claiming extreme psychological damage. Civil rights organizations accused the Bureau of Prisons of cruel and unusual punishment. Medical experts testified that prolonged solitary confinement could cause permanent mental injury. Some inmates attempted suicide. Others mutilated themselves. Several lost the ability to speak normally. One federal judge described conditions at ADX Florence as close to inhumane, yet the prison continued operating. Officials argued that ADX Florence was necessary, that these men were too dangerous for normal confinement, that safety had come first. And in many cases, they weren't wrong. Some prisoners housed here had organized murders from behind bars. Others had attacked guards. Some had plotted terror attacks. The question became impossible to answer. How do you protect society without destroying the people you imprison? By noon, most inmates have already lost track of hours. Lunch arrives through the same narrow slot. Rice, beans, processed meat, fruit when available. No menus, no choices. Meals rotate on strict schedules. Everything is calculated. Calories, nutrition, cost. Food becomes routine, not pleasure. Some prisoners hoard scraps. Others lose interest in eating altogether. Without conversation or stimulation, hunger becomes secondary to boredom. In their cells, inmates pace, count footsteps, do push-ups, write letters that may never be answered. Some keep journals. Others recite old memories just to feel connected to something real. Guards rotate shifts. They are trained not to engage emotionally, not to linger, not to react. Many officers develop coping mechanisms of their own. Dark humor, emotional distance. Some quit after only months. Working at ADX Florence changes people on both sides of the door. Even in isolation, power exists. Certain inmates gain influence through letters, coded messages, or outside contacts. Staff intercept most communication. But not all. Some prisoners attempt to manipulate guards. Others use hunger strikes to protest conditions. A few become infamous simply by surviving. Reputation spreads quietly. Who's been here the longest? Who never talks? Who screams at night? The walls may separate them physically, but psychologically, ADX Florence is still a prison. And prisons always develop their own ecosystem. One former inmate, whose name was sealed in court records, described how isolation began erasing his sense of reality. He said he would imagine conversations with people who weren't there. He would replay old memories until they felt new. He said sometimes he forgot what his own voice sounded like. He wasn't violent. He wasn't a gang leader. He was placed at ADX Florence because officials believed he posed a future threat. After several years, doctors diagnosed him with severe depression and anxiety. He attempted suicide twice. When he finally left ADX Florence, transferred to a lower security facility, he struggled to adjust. Crowded spaces overwhelmed him. Noise triggered panic attacks. He said freedom felt artificial. The world had moved on without him, and he didn't know how to catch up. By evening, the desert outside grows cold. Inside ADX Florence, dinner is served early. Another tray, another silent meal. Inmates prepare for another long night. Lights dim, but never fully go out. Guards' conduct counts. Doors remain locked. Some prisoners pray. Some exercise. Some lie awake staring at concrete. ADX Florence doesn't sleep. Cameras continue recording. Sensors remain active. Security systems hum quietly beneath the floors. Every inmate is accounted for. Every corridor monitored. Nothing is left to chance. And yet, this is when the prison feels most alive. Because at night, thoughts get louder. Regrets surface. Anger returns. And memories creep back in. Somewhere around midnight, the facility settles into a strange stillness. Only footsteps echo down empty hallways. This is when inmates confront themselves. There are no distractions, no entertainment beyond books and limited television, no conversations to escape into, just silence. This is the real punishment of ADX Florence. Not the concrete, not the chains, not the locked doors. It's being alone with everything you've ever done, every victim, every mistake, every choice. For some, that weight becomes unbearable. Hidden within ADX Florence is a section few outsiders ever discuss. It houses inmates convicted of international terrorism, men whose names appeared in intelligence briefings, men tied to bombings, mass casualties, and extremist networks. Here, communication restrictions are even tighter. Mail is screened line by line. Phone calls are rare and heavily monitored. Visits happen behind thick glass, if they happen at all. Some of these prisoners once commanded followers across continents. Inside ADX Florence, they command nothing. Their movements are scheduled to the minute, their interactions reduced to official instructions. The goal isn't punishment, it's prevention. Officials believe even a single unsupervised message could cost lives. So silence becomes policy. Ramzi Youssef was one of the architects of the 1993 World Trade Center bombing. 6 people were killed, over 1,000 injured. His goal was to collapse both towers. He failed, but the damage reshaped American security forever. After his capture and conviction, Youssef was sent to ADX Florence. He spends most days alone, allowed only minimal contact with staff. He reads, he exercises, he waits. Officials have stated that Youssef remains ideologically committed, that even decades later, he has not expressed remorse. For inmates like him, ADX Florence is not temporary. It's permanent containment. Another high-profile prisoner here is Zacarias Moussaoui, often referred to as the 20th hijacker of September 11th. While he did not board any of the planes, he admitted allegiance to Al-Qaeda and knowledge of the plot. His trial was one of the most closely watched terrorism cases in U.S. history. Today, Moussaoui lives alone in a concrete cell. No followers, no stage, just routine, just walls. He once shouted declarations of loyalty during court proceedings. Inside ADX Florence, those declarations echo into nothing. Correctional officers at ADX Florence undergo intense training. They learn tactical response, psychological awareness, emergency protocols. But no amount of preparation fully protects them from the emotional toll. Former guards describe becoming detached, hyper-alert, unable to relax even outside work. Some develop insomnia. Others struggle with trust. One officer said he stopped making eye contact with strangers. Another admitted he avoided crowded places. They weren't inmates. But ADX Florence followed them home. The facility doesn't just contain danger. It absorbs it. In the early 2000s, during a routine overnight count, guards noticed something unusual. An inmate wasn't responding to verbal commands. Medical staff were called. The man had collapsed in his cell. He survived. But the incident triggered a deeper investigation. Doctors later reported severe psychological distress linked directly to prolonged isolation. It wasn't the first case, but it was one that couldn't be ignored. Internal reviews followed. Mental health policies were quietly revised. Some inmates were moved to step-down programs. The Bureau of Prisons began allowing limited increases in human contact for certain prisoners. Small changes, almost invisible to the public. But inside ADX Florence, they mattered. For inmates who demonstrate consistent good behavior, ADX Florence offers a rare opportunity, a slow, controlled path back toward human interaction. It can take years, sometimes decades. The process is called the step-down program. Prisoners gradually earn longer recreation time, educational materials, occasional group activities. Eventually, potential transfer to lower security facilities. But many never make it. Some sabotage themselves. Others can't psychologically handle the transition. Freedom, even partial, becomes terrifying. After years of silence, noise feels violent. Conversation feels overwhelming. Some inmates request a return to isolation because it's all they know. At 3 in the morning, ADX Florence is at its quietest. No meals, no movement, just cameras humming and boots echoing down corridors. This is when memories surface, faces of victims, faces of loved ones, moments that can't be undone. Some inmates cry, some pray, some stare into darkness. There are no clocks visible from most cells. Time becomes abstract. A former prisoner once said, "After a while, you stop thinking in days, you think in walls." ADX Florence exists because some people commit crimes so severe that society cannot risk letting them operate freely. But what happens after decades of isolation? When the punishment outlasts the person? When safety comes at the cost of sanity? There is no simple answer. Supporters argue ADX Florence prevents future attacks. Critics say it destroys human beings. Both sides have evidence. Both sides have victims. And somewhere between security and compassion stands a silent concrete fortress in Colorado. Every inmate at ADX Florence is allowed to write letters. Some write to family. Some write to lawyers. Some write to people who will never respond. But many letters never leave the facility. They're held for review, redacted, sometimes rejected entirely. Former inmates say they pour their thoughts onto paper apologies, regrets, memories only to have them disappear into administrative silence. One prisoner wrote weekly to his daughter for 6 years. He never received a reply. Later, he learned she had moved. He didn't know where. Another inmate wrote to his mother until her death. He wasn't allowed to attend the funeral. He found out weeks later through a legal notice. Inside ADX Florence, grief has no ceremony. Loss arrives quietly. For every inmate inside ADX Florence, there's someone on the outside carrying the weight. Parents, children, siblings, spouses. Families often travel hundreds or 1,000 miles for brief visits behind glass. No physical contact. No embraces. Just phone receivers and thick barriers. Children grow up seeing their fathers through windows. Parents age while their sons remain frozen in time. Some families stop coming. Not because they don't care. Because it hurts too much. Because watching someone slowly disappear is unbearable. After his release to a lower security prison, one former ADX Florence inmate agreed to speak with journalists. He described the silence, the sameness, the way days blurred together. He said he began forgetting basic social skills, how to start conversations, how to respond to emotion. He said the hardest part wasn't the isolation. It was realizing he was becoming someone else, someone smaller, someone quieter, someone afraid of normal life. He told reporters, "They don't just lock you in a cell. They lock you inside yourself." Back inside ADX Florence, morning arrives again. Lights on, breakfast trays, footsteps, counts. Another 24-hour cycle begins. To outsiders, this looks repetitive. But to inmates, each day carries its own emotional weight. Some wake up hopeful. Some wake up angry. Some wake up numb. There are men here who haven't touched another human being in decades. Men who once lived loud lives, now reduced to whispers in concrete corridors. Men who will die inside these walls. And yet the world keeps moving. Cars pass on highways nearby. Kids go to school. People drink coffee and complain about traffic. Most never think about what happens here. Despite lawsuits, despite criticism, despite psychological research, ADX Florence isn't going anywhere. In fact, experts believe facilities like this may expand. As global extremism rises, as organized crime evolves, as technology makes communication harder to control, governments want certainty. They want places where influence ends, where leaders become isolated, where danger is neutralized. ADX Florence represents that philosophy. Not rehabilitation, not redemption, containment. And that's the twist. This prison wasn't built to change people. It was built to remove them from the equation. As darkness falls over Colorado desert, ADX Florence settles into its nightly rhythm. Cameras scan corridors. Guards walk their routes. Inmates lie awake. Some replay memories. Some count breaths. Some wonder if anyone still remembers them. There are no dramatic escapes. No riots. No headlines. Just quiet and silence and time. So what do we do with places like ADX Florence? Do we accept them as necessary? Do we question their human cost? Do we look away? Because somewhere tonight, inside a concrete cell, a man is staring at a ceiling. He may have committed unimaginable crimes. He may have destroyed lives. But he is still human. And he is completely alone. ADX Florence keeps society safe. But it also forces us to confront something uncomfortable. How much isolation is too much? And what happens when punishment outlives purpose? ADX Florence stands silent in the Colorado desert, a fortress built on fear, a monument to control, a place where the world's most dangerous criminals disappear from public view. But inside those walls are stories most of us will never hear. Lives paused, minds reshaped, time stretched into something unrecognizable. This isn't just a prison. It's a psychological frontier. And every day, behind locked steel doors, the battle between safety and humanity continues. If this story meant something to you, please subscribe, share, and drop a comment. Your support helps these stories be heard.